Hey everyone, welcome back to Reboot. This is episode 2.5. I'm Mike Mahardy.
And I'm Jake Decker.
And last week we published an episode of our opinion editorial show, Reboot, about Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. We titled it, Why Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is the open world game we need. We talked about how all the new things it does for the Zelda series for Nintendo, but also it came along at a time when I think a lot of us were getting tired of open world games.
Yeah,
Horizon Zero Dawn was great.
If you haven't seen it yet, you should probably watch that before you watch this.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this isn't going to make a lot of sense.
Right. As usual, in our off week, we're doing a Q&A about the past episode and answering more questions that we might not have gotten to in the video. And then we're going to tease our next episode, which we kind of just yesterday figured out what we want to do. So I'm going to be writing that over the weekend, and Jake and I will be working on that next week. But anyway, we played Breath of the Wild, a fair amount of it.
Yes,
after
we did.
It came out. So then the more we played it, we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do with it because we knew it was kind of a big deal, to say the least. And then we ended up wanting to talk about why it came along at the time it did, why it helped. It sets a new benchmark for open world games. I'm sure people mention The Witcher 3 and what, like I said, that its open world overshadows The Witcher 3's, or at least how it's designed. But we can get into that. But thanks again for your YouTube comments and your Twitter mentions. We on GameSpot. You want to talk about the comments on GameSpot?
Yeah. So I mean, it was super cool seeing all those comments because they were very thorough, very long and very thorough. We couldn't quite fit them in this show because that would probably take the full 10, 15 minutes we want these to run for. But still, thank you for the support. It seemed rather constructive. Although I didn't get to all of it, it seemed like people debated with what you said, what other people said. It's cool. It's cool to see that. I'm sure there was lots of shit posting too, but
yeah, being a Nintendo game, and I think a lot of fanboyism came out. But yeah, thanks so much for your well thought out comments and responses and critiques. We appreciate them. But we're mainly focusing on YouTube comments today. We do have a few that we picked out that we thought were good questions, things we didn't touch on in the video, because unfortunately we don't always have 20 minutes to make. We don't want to have a 20-minute video, so we can't touch on everything we wanted to, but wanted to hit the main points in our argument. So yeah, we've got a few questions. We'll alternate between reading them and have Jake start with the first one.
All right. The first one comes on YouTube, and it's from Duck Clock. The Duck Clock, actually. He says, there's a bit of a debate going around right now about Breath of the Wild's weapon degradation system. Do you think weapons break too easily, or do you think it provides an ideal challenge to the player?
You want to start?
Sure, I can start. I think I have somewhat of an issue with the degradation system. I think weapons break a little too easily. I like that they do break, though, because it forces you to try different weapons. It forces you... It kind of makes things tense, right? It's like, all right, there's a bokoblin camp right there. I've got an almost broken sword. Can I get through them? I don't know. So I really do like that. I find a really cool weapon and it breaks too soon, and that's kind of disappointing. But I don't have a huge issue with it.
I do think that, like a lot of things we mentioned in the video, the weapon degradation factors into the survival of this game. I think it encourages you to keep exploring. This isn't like a loot game. It is. There's loot involved in this game, so I think it's not like Diablo where you might get this legendary weapon that you stick with for 3 hours or something if you're like a high-level player and keep playing another for the rest of the day and you get a better one later on. Or you don't have to worry about getting a better one. You have the peak weapon. But I think in this game, you always, unless you have the Master Sword, which still has a limit on it, I think it's a certain amount of hits before you have to let it cool down. You still have to keep exploring, and you get excited when you see a new chest because it could be any weapon. You're not going to get as attached to these weapons, but I think that factors into survival. You're kind of living off the land. The fundamentals of this game are based off of surviving, and how this open world is all about exploring and making use of the wilderness. And I think that the weapon degradation encourages you to keep adapting and being a resourceful Link rather than just this heroic one who charges into every battle. You might want to save this bow for a later, harder fight, and I think that factors into the game really well and accentuates its advantages.
Shall we move on?
Sure.
I think before...
You can read this one, too.
Yeah, before we go to the next big, long question, there's a comment that I did find that I brought up here.
That you agreed with.
I agreed with. It's by Expert, and he says, had me until he said Breath of the Wild overshadows Witcher 3, and yes, I've played both. I've played both as well. It's really hard for me to say that Breath of the Wild overshadows Witcher 3. I know you were saying the open world design overshadows Witcher 3, which I do agree with. But man, I don't...
Yeah,
I think I've played Witcher... I think I like Witcher 3 more than Breath of the Wild.
Wait, how many... You've put a lot of hours into...
800.
Witcher 3.
800 or something like that.
Yeah, you're on your fourth playthrough?
Yep.
And you platinumed it? Yeah, no. I believe I said, that was the part of the video I knew people were going to get pissed off. And I wasn't
Yeah.
trying to piss people off, but it was my honest opinion. I think Breath of the Wild is a better open world game as an open world game than Metal Gear Solid 5, Grand Theft Auto 5, Witcher 3. I don't know that I would call it a better game overall than The Witcher 3. I think The Witcher 3 is very, very special. I think that is the pinnacle of AAA development as we know it now. But I think Zelda's open world mechanics and how they fit together and how they're all integral, I think, is the best open world game. But I don't think it's a better game than The Witcher 3. Maybe I just have to play it more before I decide that. But I think its open world mechanics and systems, the way they overlap, are definitely better than The Witcher 3's. So I stick by that. So Jamie Najati on YouTube, apologies if I'm butchering your name. Thank you for commenting, though. Have a couple of compliments, which we appreciate, but I'll get right to the question. Mike, I have a question. What do you think Breath of the Wild has done for people who have never played a Zelda game? How do you feel about this being their introduction to the series? Is it worth going back to the older games? Yes, it's worth going back to the older games, very much so. Ocarina of Time, Link to the Past, Link Between Worlds, and like the Wind Waker. They all still hold up really well, and I love all those games. There are some on the DS, like Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, that I wouldn't say you should waste too much time with. They're okay. They're not fantastic. Yes, they're worth going back to, and they hold up really well. Majora's Mask is my favorite game of all time, let alone just a Zelda game. Play that on the 3DS.
It's a tough one to jump into, though.
It's not as accessible as a lot of them, but they all hold up really well still. But I will not say that Breath of the Wild is a good introduction to the Zelda series, because I mentioned in the video that Breath of the Wild kind of eschews a lot of the formula that we used to know as a Zelda game. These 8 dungeons with these arbitrary items you get at the end, this equipment that you learn to use that'll assist you throughout the game to unlock new previously item-gated areas. Then you go fight the final boss, whether it's Ganon or Aghanim or whoever it happens to be. Breath of the Wild is so different that I wouldn't actually say this is a good introduction to the series. But if you want to play this and you liked maybe the shrines, the 3D puzzles there, or you liked the general world itself, the art direction, or the kind of the story of it, like the actual narrative, and the divine beasts, who are also these 3-dimensional puzzles, I think if you like those parts a lot, you will like earlier Zelda games if you haven't played them, specifically the ones I mentioned, Ocarina, Link Between Worlds. Jake, you want to talk a little bit more about Link Between Worlds, but this is a great game, but for different reasons than Zelda games are usually great games. I would say, yes, the older games are worth going back to. No, this will not be the best introduction to the series, but as 2 separate entities, they're both very much worth playing. So, like I said, play this game as much as you want because it's awesome. Go back to the older games, play those because a lot of them are great. This will be our last question before we tease our next episode. Ryushin X, what are both of your views on Nintendo leveraging nostalgia to keep churning out their first-party games? And does it play a factor in your reviewing or playing of games?
So I guess we didn't review this.
Yeah,
That's one thing
so
we should preface.
We don't. I used to review games, and I guess these Reboot kind of can be reviewish, but we're not scoring these games, right? We have editors that do that here at GameSpot, so these aren't actual like the official reviews, but we have opinions on the games. But going into it, if you couldn't tell from the video, I love Zelda. I was wearing that stupid Link cap for the 2 camera segments, but
I couldn't tell. You were?
Shut up. We both like Zelda. I'm a huge Zelda fan, but I think the great thing about Breath of the Wild is that, you try to temper your expectations going in, despite the fact that I'm a Zelda fan. I still can look at them objectively. I don't like Skyward Sword at all. I don't like Spirit Tracks. I don't like Phantom Hourglass that much. I could keep going on other ones I don't like as much, but I won't. Breath of the Wild's awesome because I think it figured out what makes Zelda games good, like 3D puzzles, the fact that you can go underground into these dungeons and your skills are going to be challenged. But then when you come back up, it's such a different game in the overworld. Hyrule Field isn't just about avoiding these skeletons at night anymore or these creatures from the Twilight Realm if you're playing Twilight Princess. It's all about the land itself being a character. And it sounds so cliche, but this very is like a human versus environment story, not just human versus human. It's all about living off the land, and I think that's new for Zelda.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny he brings up nostalgia because that is like very key in Nintendo games at this point. And there's definitely nostalgia. I feel a lot of nostalgia when I play Breath of the Wild. But I don't necessarily think that's why I like it so much, because I was actually telling you earlier that A Link Between Worlds is almost all nostalgia, right? Like, you basically revisit the area from A Link to the Past, the best Zelda game, the best 2D Zelda game. I'll give that caveat. So I think it's like you can't ignore nostalgia when you're talking about Zelda, when you're talking about Mario. But I think there's more to it. Like, I don't think we like this game because it's a Zelda game.
Yeah.
I don't think Peter Brown gave it a 10 because it's a Zelda game. I don't think it has a 98 on Metacritic because it's a Zelda game.
Pete actually at a certain point was saying that the Zelda aspects, the narrative and the kind of tone detracted from it.
Oh, really?
He was saying at some point he felt as if it could have been better
As
if
a
it
new
wasn't
IP?
a Zelda. Yeah.
But it would have never existed as a new IP. There's
Exactly.
no
yeah.
way they
It wouldn't have been. It
had
wouldn't
a
have.
team that big.
It wouldn't
for
have been the biggest game. Yeah, because it's the biggest team Nintendo's ever had for a game. They wouldn't have had the resource behind it if it wasn't Zelda. But sometimes I think it's cool because we get so tired of these sequels and these retreads that it's cool to see that Nintendo, rather than just pumping one out and using the name to sell it and then, okay, it's an all right game, they use the name to allow them to really take a risk. And it's not as bold as making a new IP, but like they wouldn't have had the resource and the big team they had if it wasn't a Zelda game. So I think they realized they could really do something cool and different, and I'm really happy they did.
Yeah, I think just like a small little anecdote that kind of touches on the nostalgia is that if you have the amiibos, you can scan them, and occasionally a like Cap of the Wind or like Tunic of the Wind will drop, and it's basically like Link's old green tunic outfit.
Yeah.
And I want those really bad. I think I have like the whole wind set or whatever. And I put them on and I'm like, cool, I really wanted this. But then I walk around a little bit and I'm like, but this doesn't, I don't think this fits my Link right now. So I like
the Flamebreaker armor would suit me way better where I am.
Yeah, exactly.
But as usual on the half episodes, as it were, of Reboot, we're going to tease our next episode. Jake, what are we doing?
Mass Effect.
Yes. Andromeda.
Yeah, Mass Effect Andromeda, but not kind of like what a lot of people have been talking about. They've been kind of talking about how it isn't very good or how it doesn't live up to the hyper expectations. We're going to kind of take a different approach on it. We're going to look at science fiction in general.
By the time this goes up, or by the time our Mass Effect episode goes up, our review will have been up for about a week. Scott Butterworth at GameSpot is reviewing it. So this won't be the review, but this will be our thoughts about it and whether Mass Effect Andromeda takes advantage of the fact that, you know, it's in a brand new galaxy and it could be doing a lot of cool, weird things with it and with the characters and with the dialogue and with the writing, and then kind of look at what other games, future science fiction games, could, look to or, look up to and use as influence. And yeah, we're going to be, like I said, the point of the show is to kind of look at things differently. So we're looking forward to hopefully providing a different opinion about Mass Effect Andromeda that you might see anywhere else. So we'll see you next week.
Cool. See ya.